Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7. I'm Gordon Ross. In the studio this evening, helping me to dissect the news and discuss the ramifications of things happening in the world today is my guest, Chris McCusker, from the SNP's Socialist Chapter, shall we say, Chris? Chapter. Anyway, straight to the news tonight, Chris. And the big story, of course, today is that Iran is now mourning its second in command. Iran's supreme leader wept in grief with hundreds of thousands of mourners thronging Tehran streets on Monday for the funeral of the military commander Qasem Soleimani, killed by a US drone strike on the orders of US President Donald Trump. As the coffins of General Qasem Soleimani and an Iraqi militia leader, Abdul Mahdi al-Mohandes, who also died in Friday's attack in Baghdad, were passed over the heads of the mourners, Soleimani's successor vowed to expel US forces from the region in revenge. The killing of Soleimani, the architect of Iran's drive to extend its influence across the Middle East, has stoked concern around the globe that a broader regional conflict could erupt. So, Chris, is this the start of yet another protracted war in the Middle East, do you think?
It has all the hallmarks of becoming so. I would urge Trump to go forward with extreme caution. It's a volatile situation that could, if it's not treated properly, if it's not de-escalated properly, it could ramp right up there. It really could.
So after killing the head of the Quds force, the American leader now, Donald Trump, is asking for calm, for restraint.
Yeah.
After taking this remarkable decision to assassinate the second in command of Iran.
Yeah. It's a bizarre move when you actually think that in order that Trump does wrong in order to appeal for calm and it's calm on what his say so.
Well, there were arguments raging on social media today over whether this was a premeditated attack by the United States or whether this was done at the whim of the Commander-in-Chief himself. And there seem to be arguments in favour of both of these positions, one claiming that Soleimani had been targeted deliberately. For many years they've been watching him, and this seemed like an opportunity to take him out. On the other hand, there are other people arguing that Trump himself decided almost unilaterally to launch this attack as a target of opportunity.
I would probably go along with I think I'd be in that camp rather than the first.
Do you think he was a target of opportunity?
I think so, because make no mistake, Soleimani was not what you could call the pillar of society.
No, he was not.
Do you know what I mean? But at the same token, he was in the same trenches as the US when they were fighting ISIS.
Well, this is the irony of this situation, isn't it? That Soleimani was creating militias in other countries to fight ISIS and to fight ISIL or Daesh, as they call them. And particularly, he was supporting Bashar al-Assad in Syria against these insurgents, but also against the rebellion.
Yeah.
So he clearly has his eye on much larger prize than just just his own corner of the Middle East.
Yeah, but then that leads me to ask as to why, if he was doing so, and that's a shared common goal, especially in the West, is to try and sort of like stem the flow of ISIS and Daesh and all the other extremist groups within the Middle East. If the British and the Americans are joining in that coalition, why then does Trump decide to take him out if he was doing what you would effectively say he was doing good work there?
He was actually helping them out, destroying a terrorist organisation.
Is there a bigger thing that Trump's taken him out of the equation.
Do you think this is more about Iran trying to create some kind of alliance of Arab nations? In other words, reaching out its own tentacles, if you like, into other regions of the Middle East to try to gain more influence with these other nations?
There is that, because it's widely known that the out with the actual Arab Emirates, who pretty much have the rights of all the oil sewn up. They would much rather have Trump as an ally than a foe.
I see.
So you could say that that there is a backstory working here, that Trump is trying to keep them on side, and as well as that, obviously the close alliance that Britain has with the Arab Emirates as well.
Of course, Britain has a long history with Iran, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, General Esmail Ghani, the new commander of the Quds Force, the elite unit of Iran's Revolutionary Guard charged with overseas operations, has promised to continue Martyr Soleimani's cause as firmly as before with the help of God. And in return for his martyrdom, we aim to rid the region of America. God the Almighty has promised to take Martyr Soleimani's revenge, he told state television. Certainly, actions will be taken. Other political and military leaders have made similar unspecific threats. Iran, which lies at the mouth of the key Gulf oil shipping route, has a range of proxy forces in the region through which it could act. The crowd in Tehran, which state media numbered in the millions, recalled the masses gathered in 1989 for the funeral of the Islamic Republic's founder, Ayatollah Khomeini. Soleimani was a national hero in Iran, even to many who did not consider themselves supporters of Iran's clerical rulers. Aerial footage showed people packing the thoroughfares and the side streets and chanting "Death to America." A welcome show of national unity for Tehran after anti-government protests in November, in which many demonstrators were killed. So not everyone in Iran is pleased by this, apparently, because the number of people who were killed in these protests, there will obviously be other ramifications. And that leads us into the next story, which is the UK and the Iraqi prime ministers have agreed on the need to de-escalate the region's tensions. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreed with Iraq's Prime Minister Abdel Mahdi on the need to de-escalate tensions in the region when they spoke by phone on Monday, according to a UK statement following the killing of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander Qasem Soleimani by a US drone strike on Friday. The leaders discussed the need to de-escalate tensions in the region following the death of Qasem Soleimani, and they agreed to work together to find a diplomatic way forward. The statement from Johnson's office has said, the Prime Minister underlined the UK's unwavering commitment to Iraq's stability and sovereignty and emphasised the importance of the continued fight against the shared threat from Daesh. So Downing Street now appearing to support the leadership in Iraq as well. Now, many people in Iraq regard the current government there as a kind of puppet government, and not everyone in Iraq is, shall we say, in favour of it. But Boris Johnson's official spokesman has refused to criticise Trump directly, but made clear that the UK government would not support such a course of action after the US president said he could target 52 Iranian sites if Iran retaliated over the assassination, some at very high level and important to Iran and Iranian culture. This appears to be a threat from Mr. Trump to commit a war crime, because attacking a country's cultural buildings or infrastructure is an illegal act, is it not? Under the laws of international laws of warfare, for one thing.
If you look back to Tony Blair, if you look back to Henry Kissinger, they've all got a common thread here. Do you know what I mean? They're all guilty of war crime. I personally, Blair, when he was in charge of the Labour Party, was a deciding factor of so many Labour members leaving the Labour Party, just solely because of, the actions that he took.
Well, allegedly, you have to add to that, this is your opinion.
You can put your allegedlys in there. I'm talking from a personal point of
yes,
view
indeed.
as to why the final nail in the coffin for me was sadly when John Smith died. I thought, right, well, there's no point in staying in the Labour Party. But even
this is not actually acting on a war crime. This is threatening to commit a war crime. And I've noticed that Boris Johnson's spokesman has said that international conventions are in place that prevent the destruction of cultural heritage, implying that the UK does not believe such threats would be carried out.
Well, no.
So perhaps this is just sabre rattling. Is this just Trump making a lot of noise?
Well, I can't remember what MP it was today, but one of our MPs said that Trump favours policy announcements via Twitter than anything else.
Yeah, he seems to operate only on Twitter when it comes to deciding anything.
And so it's obviously there is no briefing to his tweets.
He doesn't want his words edited.
It goes from head to hand.
Aye.
And there's nobody in between to
somebody
sort of
said
proofread
there's
it.
no filters.
So there's not anybody there to proofread it and say, you can say this, or no, you can't get away with that. But but what I was trying to say earlier on, the common thread here is that it could be argued that Trump's administration is, for all intents and purposes, a dictatorship.
Well, it seems though also that whenever Mr. Trump makes a pronouncement like this or a threat like this, somebody from his own administration jumps in and says, well, that's not what he meant, and roll back from that. And then Mr. Trump will step in again and say, that is what I meant.
That is what I meant, yeah.
But we actually are hearing also, you'll recall Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the House of Representatives, famous a foe of Donald Trump's politically, and she says that the House is to vote on a resolution to limit Trump's military actions on Iran. The US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the House will introduce and vote on war powers resolution this week to limit US President Donald Trump's military actions regarding Iran. So it looks like the House of Representatives is planning to try and put the brakes on Mr. Trump's ability to carry out these threats.
I don't see that happening, to be honest with you.
You think it's maybe just a gesture?
It is. It's gesture politics, because I think, Trump will do whatever he wants regardless. Trump is a man who does not take advice.
No, he doesn't. That's certainly true.
And I would say to the same issue there would be Johnson as well. Johnson gets tutored in what's been put out there, and this statement's coming from. And it's interesting that it says it comes from Downing Street.
You're of the opinion that a lot of what Mr. Johnson does when he responds to these things is actually coming from Mr. Trump's administration rather than the UK.
Undoubtedly, because let's not forget, I still think that Boris Johnson was on holiday when this statement was put out. I think he only recently returned yesterday.
And although Dominic Raab was recently quoted as saying that he had been in constant touch with the Prime Minister during his holiday.
No doubt. But
we only have the word.
Of a matter of such significance, any Prime Minister with credibility would have cut his holiday short. He would have came home and he would have convened some sort of meeting of, I don't know, some sort of meeting of his cabinet anyway.
Well, Mr. Trump's not only been threatening Iran, He has also been making threats against Iraq and said that if US troops were required to leave, and I know the Iraqi government has passed a motion which asks the American military to leave Iraq in response to this. Trump has also said, he's threatened sanctions against Iraq and said that if US troops were required to leave, then Iraq's government would have to pay Washington for the cost of, and I'm quoting here, very extraordinarily expensive airbase there. So Trump's basically saying that, if you chuck us out, you'll have to pay for our airbase.
Yeah.
It sounds a very Trumpian thing to say.
It's a very childish thing to say. But then, to be honest with you, I don't actually think Iraq actually asked America to establish any kind of airbase in the first place.
No, and it could just be left to rot as far as the Iraqis are concerned, I suppose. There is another issue here, which was that, and although it isn't in our script, I have been reading elsewhere today that the Iranians have made a statement regarding their nuclear ambitions, saying that they are going now to abandon the restrictions that were placed on them and go back to working on, presumably, enriching uranium, which is obviously going to annoy the Americans. But they have said also that they are prepared to stop doing that if America lifts the sanctions. They've left the negotiating door still open a bit, which struck me as unusual for Iran, especially given the severe provocation that they're currently under.
But I think that they have to. I think what Iran is effectively doing is basically saying, right, okay, in this argument there are no adults in the room here. We are going to do the adult thing, and we're going. This is what we're going to do. So then it's up to Trump.
Yeah, I have the feeling that this statement was written by diplomats rather than the military.
Rather than, ministers.
However, I don't have any evidence to present tonight in the programme to support this. It was an article I read today.
No, I actually read a similar article as well, and I also seen a news clip earlier on today of an Iraqi lecturer from London. And he was pointing out a similar vein as to, that somebody needs to be the adult in the room.
Somebody needs to take responsibility for the diplomacy and the data.
And it seems to be that Iran and Iraq are leading the way. Indeed. Where Trump is just throwing the toys out of the.
Well, Iran and Iraq have fought a very costly war themselves. 10 years and millions died, and I don't think they want to go back to those days themselves.
No, I don't think they want to go back to those days. But you can see that to my mind, the best outcome on this would be for Iraq and Iran to now more than ever
become allies,
closer together. Maybe not allies.
Not allies, but I understand. But to cooperate
together
with each other on security matters.
Because if two sort of like work on the same agenda, that their ideas are a lot better than America's ideas.
Chris, I need to stop you right there. Okay, I'm sorry. I know we could talk more on this subject, but we have to move on. We've got a very packed show this evening. Okay. We're going to move on now to Australia, and you'll be aware of the problems Australia's been facing recently. Now, Australian officials took advantage of better weather on Monday to reopen roads blocked by wildfires to move some people to safety through thick smoke, although thick smoke stalled rescue efforts and hundreds of people remain stranded. Fires have ravaged more than 8 million hectares, that's 19 million acres of land across the country, an area nearly the size of Austria, killing 25 people, destroying thousands of buildings and leaving some towns without electricity and mobile coverage. Police on Monday confirmed the death of a 71-year-old man on the southwest coast of New South Wales state, who was reported missing on December 31st. A second day of light rain and cool winds brought some relief from the heat-fueled blazes, which had consumed parts of the two states over the weekend. But officials warned that the dangerous weather was expected to return this week. Australia's neighbouring countries, including New Zealand, Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, have offered support as the country continues to fight massive bushfires burning in the New South Wales and Victoria areas. Members of the New Zealand military are en route to Australia to assist with the efforts, adding to the 157 New Zealand firefighters already deployed in Australia, some of whom have been assisting their Australian colleagues since October. Seems absolutely incredible that these people have volunteered from New Zealand in October and they're still there.
They're still there, yeah.
How bad is this getting? I mean,
it's not getting out of control.
It's been out of control.
My elder brother lives in Melbourne, and he's saying that you can feel a sense of anxiety in his community.
They're starting to feel nervous.
People are starting to although Melbourne's quite a number of miles away from where these fires are. But people in Melbourne, they've got family.
But of course, fires don't recognise boundaries, do they? They're just going to jump a boundary.
No. But the differentiation of climate between
and also the type of undergrowth and foliage in the areas are different.
But because his sort of like friends have got family that are in this area that are like directly affected by it. He's getting constant updates, and people are getting naturally worried.
One thing I think that has not been mentioned very much in the mainstream media is the carnage on the animal population. I heard figures from other news agencies today claiming that about 500 million wild animals have perished in this inferno. Kangaroos, possums, wombats, you name it.
I've actually heard that there are
koalas, obviously.
Several koalas.
We've seen a lot of them in the TV.
But we are hearing reports of several species as yet unknown could actually be extinct
because of this fire.
Because of this fire. Because they are native to Australia.
And of course, Australia, being a subcontinent, has unique species that don't exist anywhere else on the planet. And this could be an extinction level event for them.
See an erosion of several species.
Yeah, I mean,
because they have been dwindling in numbers in recent years. But this is obviously exacerbating it because it's taking up its natural habitat.
I mean, I know that fires are a part of the natural life cycle of eucalyptus woods in Australia, and bushfires happen every year. And usually there are even some plants whose seeds will only crack open and germinate under extreme heat of fire. So it does form a natural part of the life cycle. But this has been so extreme. 3,000 degrees Celsius, some of the temperatures have been enough to bake the soil into glass in some places. Those are unheard of conditions. I don't think I've ever heard of anything as severe as this.
It's obviously, again, it's a disaster on a disastrous scale.
Almost a biblical scale.
Obviously, possibly biblical. But
there's also livestock
people
in here
who are dealing with it. The emergency services, they must be absolutely exhausted, as you say.
Well, they've been fighting it for months,
running on since October, with no respite in sight, really.
Well, we'll move on to another story now, Chris. This is a little closer to home. A man described as Britain's most prolific rapist will never be safe to be released, a court has heard, as he was jailed for a minimum of 30 years after being found guilty of raping or sexually assaulting 48 men in Manchester. Reynard Sinaga, 36, a mature student from Indonesia, is thought by police to have abused at least 195 men over 2.5 years after luring them to his flat under the guise of being a good Samaritan, drugging his victims and then attacking them after they'd passed out. Ian Rushton, the North West Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor, called Sinaga the most prolific rapist in British legal history. He was proved to have committed 159 offences, including 136 rapes, which he filmed on 2 mobile phones. The police have yet to identify at least 70 of his victims. On Monday, Sinaga was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 30 years, bringing a 2-year media blackout to an end at the conclusion of his 4th trial. Now, his 4th trial, this suggests that there may have been But obviously he's been tried for other crimes before this.
But you know,
but obviously he had to go through all of these trials before he can be sentenced.
Yeah, but then you know, what's that? There's a classic biblical line or something like that about your sins eventually catching up with you.
This man sounds like a predatory monster.
This is just, you know, absolutely off the scale. It's horrendous to think that somebody is in our society is actually capable of doing this.
On this scale, this is like an industrial scale as well.
It certainly is, you know, like on an industrial scale. But the duplicity of it, you know, like acting the Good Samaritan and then taking it. I mean, we all have a bit of a joke and stuff like that.
It's an evil thing to do.
When we're discussing Rohypnol and things like that, but when you see it on this scale, it really, really does scare the bejesus out of you.
I think we should all be deeply relieved that this man is finally behind bars. Sentencing him at Manchester Crown Court on Monday, Judge Suzanne Goddard QC described Sinaga as a dangerous, deeply disturbed and perverted individual with no sense of reality. I mean, this man sounds like he was living in his own fantasy land, and you know, was abusing people at will.
A modern day Walter Mitty.
Indeed.
You know, you have to think how this man has survived in
he's not Walter Mitty as in a good sense. This guy is an evil.
But what I'm saying is that you know, he obviously had a kind of like a double life.
He also appears to be a complete psychopath. I mean, it claims here that he appeared to be expressionless and bored for much of his sentencing. He yawned and played with his hair as the harrowing evidence of the impact of his victims was read to a packed courtroom. No response from him. It's like a man without any emotions at all.
But that's what I'm saying. You know, he obviously had you know, a kind of like a real bizarre double life, you know, to pass himself throughout society as a normal functioning person, and then, you know, apparently troll these nightclubs, you know, at night.
Hunting for
victims and taking them back to his flat. I mean, so it's, you know, it really is.
The judge kind of summed him up here and said, "You're an evil serial sexual offender who preyed on young men who came into the city centre wanting nothing more than a good night with their friends. One of the victims in their victim personal statement described you as a monster. The scale and enormity of your offending establishes that as an accurate description. Rarely, if ever, have the courts seen such a campaign of rape covering so many victims over such a prolonged period." Okay. Now, speaking of rape brings us to the second subject tonight, Harvey Weinstein. His trial starts today, I believe. Former film producer Harvey Weinstein arrived at Manhattan court today for the start of his landmark rape trial, met by celebrity accusers, including Rosanna Arquette, who helped to fuel the Me Too movement in the wake of sexual misconduct allegations against him. Once one of Hollywood's most powerful men, Weinstein, 67, has pled not guilty to charges of assaulting 2 women in New York. He faces life in prison if convicted on the most serious charge, predatory sexual assault. Weinstein, dressed in a black suit, hobbled into court leaning on a walker and with a member of his team holding his arm. Lead defence counsel Donna Rotuno followed close behind. Outside the courthouse, the Silence Breakers, a group of Weinstein accusers, including actresses Arquette and Rose McGowan, held a press conference and demanded accountability for Weinstein. "As we stand here at the beginning of the new year and a new decade, the time is up on sexual harassment in all workplaces," said Arquette. "And time is up on pervasive culture of silence that has enabled abusers like Weinstein." So these women now, hopefully this is the end of the beginning of the end of a deeply unpleasant and nasty period of time for women, and particularly in the entertainment industry, but everywhere. Somebody with immense power over you could have so much control as to manipulate you sexually that way.
Yeah, but I mean, he abused that power to his own ends. and basically allowed his status.
Of course, we do have to say at this point that these are allegations. He's not been proved guilty yet.
But he has basically used
and he is denying the charges.
But he's basically used his status in the upper echelons of Hollywood to again prey on unsuspecting and sort of like less powerful people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? This happens in any workplace, whether it's whether it's a corner baker shop or whether it's a Hollywood studio.
Weinstein himself has used what many would consider the old defence of it was consensual sex, thinking that it's much harder for these women to prove that it was non-consensual, especially so long after the fact. I've noticed myself personally that they're taking, I think it's either 2 or 3 specific cases to charge him with. Not all 80 of them, but some specific ones. And he has, of course, denied these allegations, claimed that these sexual encounters were consensual. Today's court proceedings began with a pre-trial conference in the state court with the jury selection starting on tomorrow. According to Danny Frost, the spokesman for Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance, whose office brought the charges, the court sent jury questionnaires to 2,000 potential jurors. The trial will hang over the Hollywood awards season, which began with Sunday's Golden Globes. Weinstein was once a fixture at the industry's glitzy ceremonies with numerous critically acclaimed small-budget films such as Shakespeare in Love, which won the Oscar for Best Picture in 1999. One of the women Weinstein was charged with assaulting, the former production assistant Mimi Haley, has said that Weinstein sexually assaulted her in 2006. Prosecutors say Weinstein raped the second woman, who has not been publicly identified, in 2013. Judah Engelmeyer, a spokesperson for Weinstein, said on Thursday that the 2 women in the criminal case had long-term relationships with Weinstein. He said it was prejudicial to conflate the criminal matter with allegations in civil cases or with public grievances he said were lodged by women who were not part of any lawsuit. This again sounds like a lot of legal manoeuvring by the defence team in presenting these cases.
Well, any time that you see he was alleged by an unnamed person, it tends, it gets you to thinking that, they're obviously trying to build up some sort of, caseload in order to bring the sort of like the final sort of like charge, the one that's going to eventually bring him down. But
of course, in rape trials, the victim is guaranteed anonymity on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, but there's this old cliche of there is no smoke without fire.
Yep.
There has to be something there.
Well,
that would allow the American Crown Prosecution Service.
Well, they must feel that there is evidence to support this case, or corroboration at least.
Well, that's what I was trying to say to you, because it costs money to build a case.
Indeed.
And prosecution services won't build a case unless they think there's a good chance that they're going to be winning it. So from that point of view, you have to sort of like weigh up whether it's as indicated. You're saying only 3 or 4 have been brought at this moment in time out of a total of possibly 60 odd.
Yeah.
Then you can only just see this taking arms and legs, and
there may still be more. There may still be more victims out there.
Yeah.
We're going to move on now, Chris, to something much closer to home. And this is following appointments to the House of Lords of Westminster. A report from the SNP MP Tommy Shepherd has laid bare the extent to which the previous tranche of Scottish Lords were unrepresentative of Scotland in 2019. As we enter a new Westminster term, Mr Shepherd's report examines the House of Lords in the previous UK Parliament and found that in every single area of analysis covering political affiliation, constitutional aspiration, gender, age and social background, the evidence exposes the chasm which exists between the peers and the democratically elected representations of Scotland. The key findings of the report include the proportion of Scotland's MPs in the previous UK Parliament that belonged to the Labour Party was 12%, and yet 42% of the House of Lords are Labour peers. The proportion of Scotland's MPs that belonged to the Liberal Democrats was just 7%, and yet 19% of the House of Lords are Liberal Democrat peers. The proportion of Scotland's MPs that belonged to the Conservative Party was 22%, and yet 30% of the House of Lords are Tory peers.
Yep.
Now, 0% of Scottish peers in the previous Parliament supported independence, despite 45% of the people in Scotland supporting it in 2014.
Yep.
Only 14% of Scotland's peers are women. Almost 70% of Scottish peers were aged 65 or over, and about 3/5, or 59%, attended a private school. And of course, they all cost us a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's approximately £300 a day, as I understand it, is the going rate for a peer to come in and show up.
Yep, and topped up with about £2,500 odd on expenses.
Well, I believe I read a report somewhere that Sir David Steele, I beg your pardon, is one of the most expensive Scottish peers. I think he's run up an enormous sum of money. It's like £72,000 a year for turning up, 5 days a week and basically not really doing anything else, just turning up.
No, just basically turning up. Yeah, but the whole scandal I've read.
There is, of course. I have to qualify what I've just said, having read this elsewhere. There are articles which support what I'm saying about Mr. Steele, and he has one of the highest payouts of any of the Scottish peers, as far as I understand it.
I was just going to further go on and try and qualify what you were saying there,
beg your pardon. Sorry.
Because I've actually read Tommy's report, and I find it fascinating that these so-called lords are claiming for travel reimbursement. Yep. When they're outside of the London orbital. They've got houses.
The M25 road.
No, the actual London orbital itself.
What is the London orbital? Is that the railway system? Or?
The London orbital sort of like takes
Greater London.
Greater London area.
Okay.
The M25 itself orbits the actual sort of like London area, but as
so you mean anybody who comes from outside of that will get extra money?
So basically, a Labour or a Tory peer who lives in Berkshire, which is outside the M25, will be claiming travelling expense from there, even though they might be staying in a hotel in Trafalgar Square.
Chris, I know the answer to this question, but I hope you do as well. How many people, or how many MPs have the SNP put forward as potential peers? Is that a zero there, Chris?
That's a complete zero.
Zero.
It was a policy, it was passed at conference in 1995, I think it was, that the SNP would...
I think it's existed before that, I believe, as well.
Yeah, but I think it was ratified in 95, and the SNP would not be seeking to elect anyone into the House of Lords. But it's an archaic, unelected house that serves no purpose. As Tommy's report quite rightly points out, there are Scottish lords in there who... There is actually one Scottish lord, I was trying to remember his name all day today because I knew we would be discussing this, but he has only mentioned Scotland twice in his whole... It's in Tommy's report. He actually names them.
I'm just going to close with Tommy's comments, actually. And he says here that this report is further evidence that the House of Lords fails at every level to give any semblance of representation or respect to the views, the character, the aspirations of the Scottish people. It is a key contributor to this broken Westminster system. The Lords is an institution which should have no authority or standing in any place wishing to claim a title in modern democracy, and the SNP has consistently campaigned for it to be abolished. So there you go. I think that's pretty uncompromising.
Well, you see, I think you know, normal people like you and I, when we discuss Lords, it evokes memories of Braveheart. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
These,
Okay.
you know, Lords
Yeah.
being given hereditary title, and you know, in order to do the king's bidding.
The most expensive Derby and Joan club in the world,
Oh,
I always
yeah.
characterise it as.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as you said a couple of weeks ago, just a sleeping club.
Yeah. Slumber party for
Slumber
the aged.
party for the
Okay,
aged.
well, listen, with that, Chris, I would like to move on to another United Kingdom story, and that is the number of new cars which have been sold in Britain in the last year fell to its lowest level since 2013, as consumers held back from purchases amid increased restrictions on diesel vehicles and the ongoing economic uncertainty in the run-up to Brexit. Britain is Europe's second largest market for new cars, and Monday's figures add to signs that households grew more cautious about spending last year despite low unemployment and rising wages. The new car registrations dropped by 2% in 2019 to 2.31 million, according to the provisional data from the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. The third annual fall since sales peaked at 2.69 million in 2016. New cars registered in Scotland during 2019 down 5.5% on 2018 to 176,503. Now, undoubtedly, consumer confidence on big ticket items is still very weak, according to the Chief Executive, Mike Hawes. So, I mean, Chris, I think it seems obvious, almost, doesn't it? It's us that people are worried about the future now, and they're maybe putting off such a big ticket item as buying a new car.
Quite rightly so.
Or even buying a second-hand car these days.
You know, I mean, I'm currently running an old heavy diesel car, and it's because, quite simply, there is no incentive for me to
change it.
To get a better one.
Well, the other thing is that the car manufacturers themselves are claiming they're going to struggle because of Brexit, because it has remained the industry's top concern, according to Hawes. Despite the risk of 10% tariffs on imports and exports of cars in 2021, if the Prime Minister Johnson cannot negotiate a post-Brexit deal with the European Union before then. So it's all up to Mr. Johnson to try and save the ailing British car industry with a trade deal.
Yeah, and the Tories don't have a great track record when it comes to the British car industry, do they?
That's very true. I'm old enough to remember the Roots car plant and a few other stories besides.
Oh, aye.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think you have to go back as, what I think it was the mid-70s when Scotland last had a car plant. I think it was Linwood.
Yeah, it was, yes.
The
Hillman Imp and the Sunbeam Rapier and all these cars.
Sunbeam and the Chrysler and,
Yep.
you know...
Humber. Do you remember
Humber.
Humber?
Oh, I
Yep.
remember the Humber.
So you and I are ancient enough to remember these things, Chris. Yeah, but also on top of this business with Brexit, we also have the increased pressure down on the car industry to convert from diesel and petrol engines to electric vehicles now.
But I honestly think that this is where the Scottish Government, if we were independent, could make great strides in, you know.
How do you envisage that, Chris?
I mean, Scotland has got a surplus of electricity. We've discussed this before.
Of course, yes. But we know the Invergordon smelter is all ready to set up to make wheels for cars.
Yeah. So, you know, they could do so much by pioneering cheaper electric cars that, you know, could be used and devise some scheme where, you know, just say for argument's sake, sitting on well, you'll know this because you're in the industry, right? My car's a 59 plate, so what that makes it, what, 20 odd years old or something like that,
Yeah.
for argument's sake. So if there was something about, you know, some sort of scheme that you could surrender a heavy diesel car over a certain age, and you could get sort of like money off of
There are some.
a greener car.
Yeah, there are schemes. There is a scrappage scheme actually run by the Scottish Government. And it's to enable you to buy new electric vehicles.
Yeah.
But the discount is about £5,000 as far as I remember.
Yeah, but then there's also
But-
loops and hang-ups that apply to your social status that could be taken away.
Well,
You know, which bars you from
Yeah.
actually, you know, taking up these good incentives.
Chris, there's another thing. We're going to need to move on from this story to the next one, unfortunately. But the next one involves Northern Ireland this time. Now, Boris Johnson is facing demands for cash compensation that could run to more than £100 million for any disruption caused by Brexit to Northern Ireland's businesses. Leading entrepreneurs, sorry about this, leading entrepreneurs in Northern Ireland have, here we go, sorry, I'm just losing my screen here for a moment. Okay, leading entrepreneurs who met political leaders in a local summit on Friday fear that the trade barrier down the Irish Sea will mean higher costs for consumers and businesses. People here did not vote for this future. We should not be expected to pay the price for it in jobs and lost opportunities, said Callum Eastwood, the newly elected MP for Foyle and the leader of the Social Democrat and Labour Party. Business leaders representing 12 sectors in the region have received cross-party support from the Democratic Unionist Party, Sinn Féin and two newly elected Northern Irish parties for 4 amendments to the Brexit legislation. They will be debated on Wednesday, and senior government sources have warned of the high hurdles that the group faces to get its amendments through. So, obviously, problems in Northern Ireland as well. Everything is spreading out from the whole Brexit catastrophe. It's like a ripple effect.
Well,
you know?
there's two things that jump out to me on this story as the 100 million that Ireland are claiming that they, you know, could possibly claw back. That's a drop in the
drop in the ocean.
Drop in the ocean to Boris Johnson. I mean, he found 100 million to, you know, push his Brexit agenda back in October.
Yeah, the dark money.
Just, you know, so I mean, it's down the back of the sofa.
Yeah.
You know, somewhere. But the other side of the coin is the fact that revocation of Article 50 is still a possibility up until the 31st of January.
So you still believe that they might jam the brakes on it?
Something could still happen.
Well,
You know,
maybe
I mean,
wishful thinking.
I put a lot of faith in, you know...
a lightning bolt striking Boris Johnson
well,
down or
no,
something
but
like that?
you know, there could be you know, a good cross census of cross-party working here.
Yeah.
What you know, and now that we seem to have a bit of savvy coming from Northern Ireland.
Well, the problem was that in Northern Ireland they just cannot get a majority together anywhere in the UK to do anything about this.
Yeah.
But it is obviously important also south of the border to Dublin that the whole of Ireland works seamlessly as it did before when everybody was in the EU.
Yeah.
And this is obviously Brexit undoes all of the good that was done by the Good Friday Agreement.
Aye, because you know, as the viewers know, there is no good Brexit.
Chris, we're going to move on to hopefully maybe our last story tonight, and it's coming up to the end of the programme. But anyway, we're talking about Arran. Now, this Arran used to be known as a hidden gem because it was where a lot of Scottish people went on holiday. Travellers to Arran have faced difficulties getting on and off the island as regular car ferry services have been disrupted due to adverse weather conditions. Calmac said the high winds and heavy swell meant that ferries were unable to dock at Arbroath yesterday and today. All Calmac services across Scotland are facing potential cancellation or disruption today and tomorrow due to the forecast adverse weather conditions. And passengers are advised to check with Calmac website for details. So it looks like anybody There is a website available for those of you who are affected by the CalMac weather problems, and that is www.calmac.co.uk/service-status. Okay, the next story, this is an interesting one for you and I, Chris. The Declaration of Arbroath, it's coming up for its 700th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
The National Records of Scotland and the National Museums of Scotland have announced a programme of public events to mark the 700th anniversary of the Declaration of Arbroath in 2020. The NRS programme examines the Declaration, the context of its creation and its significance today, featuring talks by academics, historians and an artist, including the head of medieval and early morning records, Alan Borthwick, and the writer and historian Fiona Watson. National Museums Scotland will present a discussion with historians and archivists chaired by curator Dr. Alice Blackwell of the National Museums Scotland, a panel including Fiona Watson, Professor David Brown of the University of Glasgow, and Alan Borthwick will explore the origins, influence and legacy of the Declaration. There will also be a drop-in event with family craft activities at the museum, as well as a chance to meet NRS conservators and discover how the medieval documents are repaired and treated and cared for. So a great deal going on here, Chris, to mark this 700th anniversary.
And rightly so.
And of course, many people don't understand the significance of the Arbroath Declaration.
Well, the actual text document itself has to be, preserved for, long after me and you.
Apparently, it is actually, the real document is going to be on display. People will be able to read it for themselves.
Aye, because I think that they have done a sufficient amount of work to allow it to go on public view. How close people will be able to get to it is, another.
Well, I believe it's in a glass case because it is a parchment, so yes, obviously it has to be. Has to be kept in a controlled environment.
There's something to do with temperature and stuff
well,
like that.
Well, also I think if people touch it, the grease from your fingers can become acidic and cause it to rot or something. But
we're just thinking of the queues of the people to go up. And
my understanding was of the history of this document was that in 1320, Robert Bruce and Bishop Lamberton decided that they needed to convince the rest of Christendom that Scotland was really a country and that it was trying to fight against an invading force from England.
Yes.
And so the document was a way of uniting the entire country in one document saying we are a country, we are a Christian country and we are fighting for our survival here.
Yes,
and of course it was signed and sealed by dozens of nobles.
Well,
and burghers. It was many different classes of people in the feudal hierarchy.
But this is us going back to what we were discussing at the start of the show about these lords and.
But it's also the origin of the claim of right.
Well,
the establishment of a country where the people were more powerful than their king and could dethrone their king if they didn't like him. Their ruler could be swept away and a new one installed that the people wanted. And,
or not, as the case may be.
Well, my reading of it was that the king or the leader of Scotland at the time should protect the people. That was his first duty. And if he failed to do that or sold them out to English doctors or usurpers, then they would cast them out and find somebody else to do the job. So this was like the formative version of democracy as we know it today.
I would like to, as a self-confessed Republican, I would like a return to those days. Do you know what I mean? Where we don't have an unelected head of,
I'm also I'm reliably informed that there's also an all under one banner march in Arbroath as well. To mark the occasion. So that will be, I think, the first one of the year, the first actual march. But the one in Glasgow, I think, is actually going to just precede it.
By hours?
So on Saturday we have the march in Glasgow.
Aye. That's 11:30, leaving Kelvin Grove Park.
Indeed, yeah. Anyway, the Declaration of Arbroath is an iconic piece of Scotland's history, and it's the founding document of the country, from which everything else that And also it was the inspiration for the founding document of the United States. Their Declaration
of Independence
was in large part inspired by the Declaration of Arbroath.
Yeah.
That's quite well known. Anyway, now we're going to talk about the glitterati.
The glitterati of the Globes.
The lovies. And there has been Scottish success at the Golden Globes. The Scottish actor Brian Cox has won the Best Actor award for his role as a media company mogul Logan Roy in the HBO series Succession. And Kirsty Wilson-Cairns from Glasgow was the screenwriter on the film 2017, which... did I say 2017?
2017.
I do beg your pardon. 1917, of course, which won the best film. Scotland also featured in Succession, with scenes being filmed in Dundee, and scenes for 1917 were actually filmed in the Govan Graving Docks in Glasgow last year. I actually remember seeing them setting up huge cranes and backdrops around the Graving Docks to film this.
Well, you know, I mean, Scotland and Glasgow in particular does quite well, and Edinburgh as well.
Yeah.
You know, we do quite well out of Hollywood films and stuff like that. Because what we've seen in the last decade, and I know that was only a couple
Imagine
of weeks
what
ago.
we could do if we had our own studios.
Well, see, this is what I was sort of leading on to.
Oh, sorry,
Ireland was used quite a lot by Hollywood films and stuff like that.
Yes.
Some of the
Braveheart and Game of Thrones.
Well, yeah, but I was also thinking there was the Liam Neeson one as well.
Oh,
that, Rob Roy.
Rob Roy, yep.
You know, so some of that was filmed
Indeed.
in Ireland as well, and you know, but we have seen, you know, there was the Tom Cruise ones about the zombies. That was filmed in George Square.
Indeed.
Well,
of course, we also have Ward Park Studios, and Outlander still filmed out there as well. It's into its fifth season now of Outlander.
Fifth, I think it is, yeah.
So Scotland's doing well, considering what we have.
There was also chat last year, if you remember, that they were looking into the feasibility of a purpose-built studio set outside of Pennycook or something like that.
Yeah, they keep talking about it, but it never ever seems to happen.
You know, as I say.
A sound stage, I think.
The thing that stood out for me, Brian Cox was wonderfully standing up for Scotland. He was
at the end when he was asked about it.
He was asked about it, and he said, I wasn't prepared to discuss it, but I'm going to give it.
Yeah, he did. He surprised me that actually in his interview.
I think it's absolutely wonderful that we've got an actor of his magnitude.
He's an A-list actor in Hollywood.
An A-list actor who, you know, just has said, look, we've had enough.
We have the right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
because he joins Alan Cumming, another A-list Hollywood actor who also supports the independence cause.
Aye, because an awful lot of actors have not sort of declared an interest.
Sean Connery, of course, probably being the most well-known of all, I think.
Well, aye, and
one of them.
And it's fair to point out, you know, as Sir Sean back in Independence, he also his favourite football team is from the south side of Glasgow, Rangers FC for yes. So
well, listen, Chris, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. We're running out of time on the programme this evening. So thank you everybody for watching the show tonight. As you know, we rely on you to help us make programmes, and if you wish to support Broadcasting Scotland as a supporter, you can do so for the small sum of just £5 a month. If you wish to do so, you can find the instructions on your screen now on how to support Broadcasting Scotland, and of course we welcome any donations as well as regular contributors of £5 a month. Anyway, that's about it from Scotland at 7 this evening. So from all the team here at our Glasgow studios, a very good night to you.